In the heart of public service, where challenges meet compassion and leadership is shaped by authenticity, emerges Kathleen Gunn's story, a journey spanning over 25 years. Imagine leading cities, communities, and orchestrating the rhythm of public life. Today, we introduce Kathleen Gunn to our podcast, a seasoned executive leader with rich government history in multiple cities in Florida and New York. Until March 2023, she served as Tamarack City Manager, overseeing a vibrant municipality with over 72,000 residents and a budget exceeding $250 million. But her journey goes beyond budgets and boardrooms. Public service for her is a vocation, a calling to understand life's purpose and contribute to the larger world. Earning academic and spiritual milestones, she holds a master's degree in pastoral ministries, a spiritual director certification, and an inner MBA, a mindful leader certification. And through crises and triumphs, she has embraced fundamental belief that how she treats people matters most. Today, we have the privilege of exploring her journey, delving into the intersections of leadership, spirituality, and the rhythm of authentic service. Join us in welcoming Kathleen Gunn, the CEO and founder of Luminance, LLC, a leader who walks the talk and lights the way for others. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy today, beyond the norm. This is an incredible moment for me, an incredible moment in life where I get to interview one of the most amazing humans on earth that I have had the privilege to meet as a professional. And I have watery eyes because it's my heart talking more than my mind. And we're not going to cry. We're not going to cry. No. It's out of gratitude, out of respect, out of honor to who you are. Because I don't think not a lot of people in the public service that you've been know you as good as I do. Because I know your heart. And you are an amazing professional, not only smart, brilliant, and beautiful, but also your heart of service, a woman of God. And now, after 25 years in service in the public sector, you have decided to take that journey into a different direction and give others in service the possibility to grow and transform the same journey that you have experienced so they can have even a greater impact into what they're doing. I have the privilege to introduce to you my friend, my sister, Kathleen Gunn. She's been a city manager, assistant city manager. I mean, the list goes on. She is definitely somebody that I am humbled to call my friend.
My goodness. Thank you very, very much. And I am so proud of you and I love you. And this is so much fun to be part of your podcast and your media empire.
And you know, the beautiful part about this is that this is not rehearsed.
No.
Every single word is true. It's so easy to speak the truth. When is the truth? So anyways, she's not used to be complimented as much, but it's true. It's not even a compliment.
Thank you so much.
So I am so delighted, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. And so let's get going with the questions. So I mentioned that you've been in this journey for 25 years, and you have made a transition. Tell us more about it.
Well, yes, I started my career in public service in 1998 in New York. I started out just graduating from school and working for a congresswoman in the U.S. House of Representatives and went to work in the mayor's office in the city of White Plains, moved to Florida in 2004 at the age of 31. I had just gotten married. I had never lived outside New York. I had a staff of 4 and then was hired to oversee a staff of 1,100. So it was a big, big move. So a lot of different things going on. I left public service once before. I went to get my degree, my master's degree in ministry. Went and worked for a fundraising organization for the church. Did that for a little while and then felt called back to public service. And so I have been back in Florida and in public service. I was in for about 8 years. And now I have decided to start my own business to do public sector consulting and coaching. I'm also a spiritual director. I lead retreats, and I just completed my training to be a chaplain for firefighters. So my big idea is to merge my ministry with my public sector experience and see what magic comes from rubbing them together.
That's beautiful. And it's beautiful that you have experienced public service and you're trying to marry the spiritual side and bring it into that because I agree with you. I'm in the same journey in the construction industry. So no wonder why we have so many similarities.
Yes.
And so it's going to be a different journey on how you do that. I'm pretty sure your calling is on right on the money and you're super, super guided. So here's another question. Being in service, you started with leading 4 people.
Yes.
And you ended recently this chapter after 25 years. You have led thousands of people. What is the difference? What was the difference? So how do you remember the difference between leading 4 and leading 1,100?
It was a big difference. I was an executive director of a small nonprofit. Then I went to work for the city of Fort Lauderdale, as you know, and I was responsible for departments like public works and planning and zoning and the building department. And I led a team of men, all of whom were older than me. And I had to learn a lot very quickly on the job. But what I would say is consistent, and what I did learn early on in my career was the most important thing about being a leader is how you treat people. And particularly in a place like city of Fort Lauderdale, there were a lot of things going on all the time. Things were going wrong. Things were falling off the tracks. There was always a crisis. And what was clear was I could treat people well during these crises or lose it. And there was no room to lose it all the time. So that was a very important lesson that I got early on that has served me throughout my entire career.
And what has been the biggest challenge you have had to overcome in public service, and how did you go about it?
In public service, there's a lot of complex issues. There's multiple stakeholders. You know, when you're in a business setting, everyone is pretty much focused on the bottom line and making money. But in the public sector, you have to be concerned about equity, accessibility, perception. Are they engaged in addictive behaviors? Are they just deteriorating little by little every day? That your soul keeps getting chipped away. And it's very easy for that to happen if you're not fierce about your self-care. Because what I found in my entire career, and most recently I've been interviewing a lot of people in the work that I'm doing, is that the people who are in these roles of city managers, they care so much about what they do, and they are regularly transgressed in a very public setting. And it creates moral injury. You know, it's as if here I am pouring myself out. A building collapses, a hurricane happens, the water treatment plant. You know, city managers drop everything. Every public sector employee that has to do something drops everything to fix it. But then the next day they can be easily expendable. So that's an unnatural state. And so if we don't have people like you and I supporting those leaders, pouring into them techniques, meditation, breathing, basic stuff, and if they don't find for themselves how to ground, they're sacrificial. You know, it's like you use them up and they're gone, and then they have a stroke, they retire, they have a heart attack.
No, you're saying you're afraid you're going to lose your job any moment.
Yes.
But also, it's damn if you do sometimes, and damn if you don't. There's not even a question. There's not a. I think the mindset in public sector, just like construction, the construction industry is very obsolete, and it's the second highest rate in suicide. So you can imagine. You get the say the bullying. You get you're treated like a second class citizen. And I see it because I also deal with city managers. But the training that I have had in the last 3 years and understanding human behavior and really seeing why people do what they do, it's really, you're looking at a person that is not showing up as a beautiful human that they really are. It's a pattern, it's fear mask, it's anger masking fear that many times they don't even know how to recognize. So more fear comes into me. I react in fear, and it goes down the two. And so how can we do it different? It doesn't have to be like this. I mean, I love what you're doing, and I'm just in awe and how we are kind of in the same journey again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought the same. It takes courage to come from a place of love, especially in the city management world and in the construction industry. It takes courage to be empathetic. It takes courage to say, speak up if you don't know what you're doing or if you need support. And to be that voice. You get mocked for, but time and time again, what we see in studies is that those leaders that are accessible, that are vulnerable, that show up as real people, who don't pretend to have it all together all the time, are the most effective ones, because people can sniff out BS, and they know who's showing up for them right and who will protect them and lead them and wants to see their best efforts, to see them flourish. So they'll follow you into the ditch. And recently I read this book, Healthy Leadership, and companies' successes have 70% to do with the leadership. All things being equal, it's that leadership that makes the successes successful. So, and people know it's a gut thing. It's not an intellectual exercise. They know who they can trust and who they can't. Intuitive. And emotional. Because people make decisions with emotions. The most of all decisions, right? I mean, how many, you probably know better. What's the statistic? Yeah. 15% of all are not emotional. I mean, it's very small. Yeah. We think we don't. No. But we do. Hiring, everything. Your first impression of people, it's a gut check. It's primal. Yeah. So let me shift it a little bit into the journey that I also know, because we definitely have been in a path, very similar path, spiritual direction, which you started that training and I followed you. I think it was the next year after I followed you. And we never knew each other. We're always trying to grow. And that was a beautiful journey for me. And it's coaching. Neither did I know. Exactly. It's guiding people, right? Listening. Tell me about that for you. How did that change you? And how did you bring that training, those tools into your own life? But as a city manager, were you a city manager then, or were you assistant city manager? Were you started as an assistant city manager? An assistant. How do you bring it to that role and then to the next city where you became a city manager? So spiritual direction, for people who may not be aware of it, is really when you sit with someone to look at your life through a spiritual lens. So what we say in the profession is that there's 3 chairs. There's the director's chair, the directee's chair, and then the Holy Spirit, or we say spiritual companions too. So it's not directee, but it is an accompaniment journey. And it's the hard bit is listening, active listening. not just listening to the words, but listening to what's behind those words and how do you get underneath what's happening. And then also listening to the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit's guidance. So we don't do well listening as a culture. I don't know if other cultures do it better. They probably do. So listening to start with is a challenge for most people because you want to interrupt and ask a question, you want to interject, whatever that is. So what that taught me was to be curious and to ask questions and not to give answers, that people have the answers within themselves. And so as it relates to my own journey and being city manager, I had to get in touch with the Holy Spirit and my own discernment process to go into that position. So, and prayer. I mean, that's a very big part of what the training is for spiritual direction, but also my own life. And there's a whole year within the program, in the training program, where we reflect on the Bible and put ourselves in those passages and see how we would interact with Jesus and the apostles and all the stories. And that was a very helpful exercise and continues to be, to immerse myself in my faith and to see how God is leading me and to let go and recognize that I don't have to do everything, that I can be the sheep, not always the shepherd. And that was one of the most important learnings that I had in my spiritual direction training is I don't have to be the shepherd. I'm not the shepherd. But as a leader, you take on these roles of you're responsible for everything and you have these problems that you have to think through and figure out because so many people are at stake. But as a person of faith, I always have a higher power, my God, to help me with my directions, my discernment, and in assisting me to do whatever work I've done.
Especially when you feel you don't have the control. Sometimes we just don't have the control. Even though we're in the role.
Yes, exactly. That to me, what you just named, is the hardest part about being a leader in the public sector, because when you walk into a room, a meeting, a public meeting, you have no idea what's going to happen. You know, whether you've had conversations with the elected officials, so you kind of have an idea of what might happen. There's a lot of withholding. There's a lot of performing for the camera. So it's a free for all often. And so when you want to do the right thing, when you're invested, when you've put all this effort into getting solutions and working with your staff and making sure that things are the best possible scenario, only for it to go off the rails because of one offhanded comment or whatever it may be, it's a act of forbearance and resiliency to keep coming back when that happens. And that's training. That's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. You know, when you're talking, I remember when I was in the city, and I had the construction department, as you might remember. And I really believe, when I got there, I really had a lot of resistance to getting that job because my perception of public service, from what I heard in my industry, no offense, this is how I heard it, is that people in government don't work. When I got there, I found totally the opposite. There are people that they're just looking to finish their retirement. They're just one day after that. But there are people, man, that I salute. And I was one because I actually took the job. And I worked. I don't think I've ever had a tougher job. Because you're doing what you think you're supposed to do, but then you have people that call you randomly that they think they are. I mean, you could have a citizen anybody and call them to you and whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is as I moved out of the city, which actually I'm grateful because it gave me the courage to start my company, because it was so tough to be courageous. And I didn't want to change who I was. So I was kind of fighting the system. You know what that means. And that's tough to do. So I over and over, I work and work. I done a lot of work for the federal government, and I see people over and over again that are very passionate and they work like beasts. I mean, they work hard to deliver the missions. So I, as you were talking, I'm remembering 20 years ago when I was at the city, heading the construction division of the city of Honolulu. I remember being in meetings. How do you? I was pissed off and frustrated multiple times. It gave me the courage to leave the city and start my business. I don't think I've ever done a harder job. I mean, back then, 20 years ago, it was tough because you wanted to get an outcome, but there were so many obstacles, and it felt like you couldn't move sometimes. And if you wanted to move, it was on you against the rest. That's how it felt to me. So my question to you is, I know you experience similar from your perspective. If you had a magic wand, and in this vision, after 25 years, that you have crafted a new mission, and a vision for city managers, for public service, what would you want to see happening in the next 10 years?
What I would like most is for emotional intelligence to increase across the board as it relates to the people who are elected and city managers too, right? Because there's such a striving culture, a performance culture, a disruptor mentality that's sort of prevalent in politics today. And really what city managers need and want is support to do the work. You wouldn't see, well, there's politics everywhere. I know that. But you have a little bit more alignment in private sector where people really are trying to make money. So they're not going to necessarily be sabotaging the CEO all the time. I do watch the morning show though, but that does happen. But at any rate, there's more of a collective moving in the same direction, it seems to me. So that's what I would think would be most important. The magic wand would be for people to just get clearer about who they are and more truthful about why they're in the business. Should they be there? Or should they be someplace else? It has to do with self-awareness and personal leadership and being invested in doing the right thing and the common good. It seems that in this country, that the common good is not what primarily motivates many elected officials. And that is to the detriment of the residents of the cities, the counties, states, the country, and to progress. And to democracy. Not to be too dramatic, but I really do believe that.
When you talk again, I go back to a conference room where I was in that room, and you're saying doing the right thing. And I remember there was a decision that needed to be made. The city manager was told not the truth. I'm asked about an outcome. I'm asked, and I said the truth. I don't like to lie to people. You know me very well. You know me that I'm going to tell you, I'm not sure it can be done. I'm going to do what I need to do. And I finish jobs 5 months ahead. I mean, impossible. But lying to someone, it's not my style. I love to lead with integrity. And so in that room full of men, not to say that, I said, guys, just do the right thing. The right thing, the truth always sets you free. And I remember them laughing at that, right? But now, with the learning that I have received, I know it was fear. Fear of doing the right thing. Fear of just saying the truth. And so
I'm wondering if the enemy here is not the city, it's not the city managers, it's not the the companies that work with them, it's not the elected officials. I think it's fear is running the show.
Yes.
And so, man, how can you change it for love? Because love is such a much more powerful emotion. To your point, emotional intelligence, right? Emotional healing. I'm not sure how to get that done, even in my industry, because my industry is driven by fear too. Maybe the world is also, right? I don't know how to change that, but I definitely believe it cannot. For me, it starts with me.
That's what God said. Be the change you wish to see in the world. And you have no control over anyone but you. But you are a leader of a company, in an industry, on social media. You have a voice, and you can use that voice. And your words and your actions and the way you show up in the world, if they're in alignment, then that's the best you can do. And that's enough. That's the thing. It's enough. We have this idea that we're supposed to control so much more that we can and make things happen and, everything should fall into line. It's just not the way life works. And so, but what we can do is be fit mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and then show up and do the right thing and trust that we're prepared for the moment that we're in and to trust our gut and to take that courageous step to be loving when you're embarrassed or you're made to feel less than because of it, but to do it anyway and to keep doing it because you may not hear from the people that you impact by doing that, but in fact, that's what speaks to people and that's what matters. So if you want to make an impact, you got to be courageous and brave and step out and do that.
Yeah, that magic wand, if you ask me the same question, I also foresee, because I'm always an optimistic. I choose to be happy. I choose to be hopeful, loving, even when I don't feel like it. It's courageous, like you're saying. It's a decision. But there is also a perception. Not only the industry, my industry, perceives public officials in general. I'm not talking about everyone, but I've heard many times they don't work, which I know is completely not true. I mean, we talked about it. I know it's not true. But there's also a perception that contractors are always taking the money, taking for a ride. There's a really bad perception. I don't think what contractors do, it's respected, right? And I also believe because of the times we're living, just like with maybe city managers, and what we have to go through to make money, people think it's a lot of money, but the actual return on a company is less than 2%, which is something they don't know. They only see the check going, but the check is not staying there, right? I really believe we would have a better interaction if we actually came together as an industry and see how do we do it better, right? Where are opportunities? Where do we find opportunities to improve? And we all can save money and also have a better life. Because nobody really wants to go through the stress we have to go through. And so the question is, if we had a magic wand, if I was to do a forum, bringing the industry, our sector, that moves a lot of money, and also city managers, would you think that would be a good idea to bring in just how do we do it better? How do you see it? How do I see it? Because there is an opportunity, just like construction, there's a lot of, it's not a dying industry, there's a lot of work, but who is doing it, is willing to step up and do it and go through what you need to go through, it's less, right? And the qualifications too. So how do we do it better? How do we learn from this? Would you think that would be interesting doing something like that?
I do. And I think I wouldn't just start or stop with city managers because often, like you said, The city manager is the last to know what's happening. So you really want to get a little bit closer to the designers and the project managers and the CIP leader, the public works directors, because that's where a bulk of decisions happen. And so when you get to the city manager, it's almost a little bit too late for what you're talking about. So I think the city manager would have a perspective and would be a good one to get. But my energy and focus would be spent mostly at a level where it's more proximate to the capital projects being designed, bid, and constructed.
Well, I am more than grateful. I think this is the first of many.
Oh, thank you.
I think
Would be
we can
wonderful.
evolve this process, and I'm ventured to say if we could invite an active to the podcast, an active or one or two active city managers, and we can have this conversation more understanding what their experience is, and I think we can do another expand this podcast.
Like a round table.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So thank you so much, Kathleen. It's been a pleasure to see you shine, to see you bring that light into others, luminary. By the way, how did you get the name? Before I say goodbye, I forgot to ask that question.
My company name is Luminance Public Sector and Consulting. And I got the name because my mission is to help people, places, like communities and organizations to uncover their light and to let it shine. So it's through a method, the Luminance method, which is knowing yourself, accepting yourself, renewing yourself, knowing, accepting, acting, renewing. It's an iterative process that you can do for yourself as an individual, as a company, and as a community. And I would just like to express my deepest gratitude for having me as your guest here. And I have been privileged to witness your journey from 20 years ago to today. And it's kind of wild that we've known each other that long, but I'm so proud of you and the life that you've built and your husband, family, and company you've created, and your voice in the industry is a much needed voice. We thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And you just reminded me something I don't think anybody knows. I don't even think you remember. But when I was doing my capability statement,
Yes,
I remember that I was struggling with that. Oh my gosh, what do I write? And I gave it to you, and you helped us build the content, which was amazing. Because you remember that?
yes, of course.
And so I'm eternally grateful to you as always.
We're partners.
Yeah,
That's
we are life partners, and in this university of life.
exactly.
Well, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
I love you.
Namaste.